Session 9, Critical Thinking on Substance Use. Tonight's activities focus on encouraging critical thinking on the subject of substance use. Participants can apply the model of critical thinking presented in this session to many other situations that involve managing risks. Families will be introduced to a few facts on common substances before jumping into a board game that encourages them to think critically about the benefits and harms of different substances and to reach consensus with the rest of the group. Breakout activities allow youth to engage with exercises that deal with peer pressure and adults to discuss risk management and supportive parenting when it comes to substance use. The session starts as usual by getting together and welcoming participants to today's activities. You can briefly introduce the theme of today's session, critical thinking on substance use. Invite the elder to conduct whatever ceremony, protocol, or acknowledgements are appropriate for the session. You can budget about 5 minutes for this portion of the program. After the opening is mealtime. If you decide that it's appropriate, you can ask the elder to bless or give thanks for the food. Invite families to serve themselves and give priority and assistance to elders and anyone who might need extra help. Make sure that everyone lends a hand to clean up. In total, the meal should take about 30 minutes. Once you've finished eating and cleaned up, you'll be collecting feedback on the last session from participants. This should take about 10 minutes and involves asking the group the following questions. What were some of the take-home messages from last week's session on offering and seeking help? Next, you can review the take-home activity by asking participants whether they found someone to help them solve the mystery sentences. Find out whether there were words that they weren't able to translate, and review all of the sentences as a group. After reviewing the take-home activity, you'll take about 10 minutes to introduce participants to this session's approach to critical thinking. You might start off the discussion by asking participants what the difference is between a medicine and a drug. You can point out that things that act as medicines for some people might be harmful for others, and ask participants to come up with an example of this. For instance, someone you know might use medication to treat their pain, but it could be harmful for others to use their medicine without talking to a doctor and understanding the medicine's risks and side effects. You can bring up the example of tobacco, and if an elder with experience with tobacco is present, you can invite them to explain the difference between sacred uses of tobacco and uses that could be considered riskier for your health. You can also mention that the things that we consider drugs might be medicines elsewhere in the world. For instance, indigenous people in South America use a variety of medicines for healing and spiritual reasons whose value and uses aren't well understood by many people in Canada. The same idea applies to a historical approach to substance use. Cannabis used to be an illegal drug, but now it's being legalized across the country and used to treat all sorts of medical issues. Your role as a facilitator is to encourage participants to think critically and to understand that the substances themselves aren't always the problem, but instead, that context and quantity shape whether someone has a beneficial or harmful relationship with a substance. After you've discussed some of these ideas with families, ask families to turn to the page in the youth booklets called A Guide to Common Substances. Looking over the guide will give participants some food for thought for the board game they're about to play. Now you'll be leading families through the critical thinking on substance use game. Set the game up somewhere that all participants can reach the board. Families will play as teams. Refer to the manual for detailed instructions on the rules of the game. Your role as a facilitator will be to help the game run smoothly by encouraging participants to keep an open mind and think creatively. Disagreements can often turn into valuable opportunities to learn. Next, youth and adults will split up for breakout activities. The youth breakout session starts with a discussion of participants' impressions of the game. See the manual for a list of potential discussion questions. After youth provide their feedback, you'll be talking to them about peer pressure. You'll also find cues for this discussion in the manual. The discussion on peer pressure leads into a role-playing game where participants get a chance to apply what they've just discussed. Please take the time ahead of the session to print out 2 sets of situation and refusal skill cards. Ask youth to get into pairs and invite pairs to draw a card from each pile. One person in the pair will act out a situation that applies peer pressure, while the other person uses the refusal skill on the card to resolve the situation. Try to budget about 30 minutes in total for the youth breakout activity. Meanwhile, You'll also invite adults to share their thoughts on the board game. See the manual for some discussion prompts. From here, steer the group into a discussion about the motivations behind youth substance use. The manual provides some background information to help you facilitate this conversation. You can also point adults to the section in their manuals called Parenting Tips on Substance Use. After wrapping up this aspect of the discussion, you'll be talking through the last two parenting steps on self-discipline and supporting children, which they can also find in their adult booklets. You won't have time to talk through all the information in their booklets with them, so you can focus on whatever topics adults feel they'd most like to talk over. Budget half an hour for the adult breakout session. After the breakout sessions, participants will get back together. If you're running 2-hour sessions, the night's activities end here. If you're running 2.5-hour sessions, you'll be watching a short video and hearing from the elder. Check your manual for instructions on accessing the video. When it comes to the elder story, you can ask them to speak on any subject of their choice that touches on tonight's material. It might be an anecdote about peer pressure or a story about the responsible use of medicines, traditional or otherwise. From here, engage participants in a discussion on the video and the elder's contribution. Session 9 comes to a close either after the breakout session or after the elder's story if you're leading 2.5-hour sessions. We recommend that you thank participants for their presence and let them know that you're looking forward to seeing them at the following session. Next, explain the take-home activity, which asks participants to complete a short quiz on the qualities of good friendships. This sheet can be found in the manual. You can print out a copy for each youth participant ahead of the session. Finally, you can lead participants through a relaxation exercise or ask the elder to offer a closing word or observe any other meaningful practice. Please keep in mind that this video is only a summary of the session. Make sure to read the detailed description in the manual and to prepare the material as indicated. Thank you for your role in bringing the Listening to One Another program to families in your community.